You know, sometimes life feels like it's playing a cruel joke on you. One moment you're sitting in your small apartment, bills stacked high on the kitchen counter, wondering how you'll get through another month, and the next moment you're being dragged into a battle over a fortune you never expected to be connected to. Before I continue, if stories like these captivate you, stories that reveal the unexpected turns of life and the lessons hidden inside them, then please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what I'm about to share with you will touch your heart and open your eyes. It all started the day I received a call from my son Daniel. His voice was sharp, dismissive, dripping with a coldness I wasn't used to hearing. "Dad," he said, "don't even bother showing up at the reading of Mom's will. You're not getting anything." She made sure of that. His words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I hadn't expected much. Of course, my ex-wife and I had divorced years ago after a long, painful marriage filled with misunderstandings, anger, and regrets. She had gone on to build a business empire worth tens of millions, while I struggled with my modest teaching job and the quiet loneliness of a life lived in the shadows of past mistakes. But it wasn't the money that hurt me. It was the tone in my son's voice. It was the way he made me feel like I was already dead to him, already written out of the story. When the day of the will reading arrived, I wasn't planning to go. I had almost convinced myself to stay home, to avoid the humiliation of being looked at like an outsider in a family that used to be mine. But something inside me, a voice I couldn't silence, told me I had to be there. Not for the money, not for revenge, but for something deeper. Maybe closure. Maybe just to show my son that I wasn't as weak and defeated as he thought. The lawyer's office was filled with tension. My son sat on one side looking smug, his arm draped casually over the chair as though he already owned the fortune. My daughter Emily sat quietly beside him, her eyes flickering with sadness every time she glanced at me. She had always been the gentler one, the one who tried to keep bridges from burning completely. And then there was me sitting stiffly in my chair, trying not to let my trembling hands show. The lawyer, an older man with kind eyes and a voice that carried authority, opened the folder in front of him and began to read. He went through the usual legal language, the estate details, the properties, the businesses, the bank accounts. My son leaned forward, practically glowing as the numbers were listed out. $34 million in total assets. Then came the moment we had all been waiting for. To my children, Daniel and Emily, the lawyer read, "I leave the majority of my estate to be divided equally between you." Daniel smirked, shooting me a quick, triumphant look, as if to say, "See, told you so." But then the lawyer cleared his throat and continued. "However, to my former husband, Michael, I also leave a substantial portion, not in money, but in trust. Because while our marriage was far from perfect, and though we could not walk the path together as husband and wife, I have never forgotten the years he stood by me when I had nothing. When I was just a dreamer with empty pockets, he was the one who believed in me, who worked nights just to put food on the table, who gave me the strength to chase the dreams that eventually made me who I am today." The room went silent. My son's face froze, his smirk disappearing as though it had never been there. Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to touch my arm. The lawyer went on. "Therefore, I have established a trust in Michael's name, which grants him ownership of the home where we first raised our children, as well as an annual sum that ensures he will live comfortably for the rest of his days. And more importantly, I leave him something no money can buy, the acknowledgement that without him, none of this empire would have ever existed." The lawyer looked up, and for the first time since the meeting started, he smiled at me. "She wanted to make sure you knew that." I felt the breath catch in my throat. My hands shook, not from fear this time, but from a wave of emotion I couldn't hold back. I had never expected her to remember, let alone honor, the sacrifices I made in the early years of our marriage. I had thought that time anger and success had erased me from her story. But in that moment I realized she had seen me all along. My son, furious, stood up. "This is ridiculous. He doesn't deserve a single cent. He abandoned us when things got hard." His voice was sharp, but the lawyer simply shook his head. "I assure you, Daniel, this was your mother's decision. She wrote every word herself. She knew exactly what she was doing. For once, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. The lawyer's words and my ex-wife's final message were enough. I turned to my son and said quietly, I may not have been the perfect father, Daniel, but I was there when your mother needed me most. One day, you'll understand that sometimes love is shown not by grand gestures, but by silent sacrifices." He didn't reply. He stormed out of the room, leaving Emily and me sitting there in stunned silence. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Dad, she still cared about you. Deep down, she always did." The money, the house, the trust fund, it all seemed secondary in that moment. What mattered most was the recognition, the validation that my years of struggle and quiet sacrifice hadn't been meaningless. And as I walked out of the lawyer's office that day, I felt lighter than I had in years. This story isn't just about inheritance or money. It's about how love, even when broken, leaves traces that can't be erased. It's about how sometimes the people we think have forgotten us are the ones who remember us most deeply. And it's a reminder that life has a way of bringing the truth to light, no matter how long it takes. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your sacrifices go unnoticed, hold on. The world may not applaud you now, but one day, someone will see the weight you carried and the love behind it. And that recognition will be worth more than any fortune. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share more stories that inspire, heal, and remind us of the strength of the human spirit. And remember, even in the darkest chapters, your story isn't over yet. The best pages are still waiting to be written. When I stepped out of that lawyer's office, the city around me felt different, brighter, sharper, like the world had shifted on its axis. The sun reflected off the glass buildings downtown, and I remember standing there for a long moment, clutching the folder the lawyer had given me, trying to catch my breath. But as I walked toward the train station, memories began flooding back, one after another, like waves crashing against a shore I thought was long gone. I remembered the early years with my ex-wife, Julia. We were young, barely scraping by. I worked 2 jobs, teaching during the day and working at a gas station at night, while Julia scribbled ideas into notebooks at the kitchen table. She was full of ambition, fire, and dreams that seemed impossible. Sometimes I'd come home exhausted, my hands blistered, my clothes reeking of gasoline, and she would show me sketches of the business she wanted to build one day, a small clothing boutique that would grow into something bigger. I'd smile, even when my eyelids were heavy, and say, "One day, Jules, one day this will be real." And it did become real. I remembered the first tiny shop she opened in an old, rundown strip mall. I had taken out a loan under my own name because no bank believed in her idea. We painted the walls together, laid down the carpet, built the racks with our own hands. I watched her light up every time a customer walked in, even if it was just 1 or 2 a day. I stayed up nights with her when she cried over bills, reassuring her that we'd figure it out. I gave her every bit of strength I had, even when I felt like I had none left. And then the business took off. It exploded in ways neither of us could have imagined. From that little boutique, Julia grew a chain of stores, then an entire brand. Her name became known nationwide. She started traveling, meeting investors, appearing on magazine covers. Meanwhile, I stayed in the background. I stayed at home, grading papers, cooking dinner, making sure Daniel and Emily were cared for when she was away. I never complained, not out loud. I believed that was my role, to be the anchor while she soared. But the more she soared, the farther she drifted from me. I remembered the fights, sharp, bitter arguments late at night when she came home from business trips. She accused me of not understanding her world anymore. I accused her of forgetting where we came from. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. And eventually, after years of strain, she asked for a divorce. I didn't fight it. I thought maybe she'd be happier without me. Maybe she deserved someone who could keep up with her pace. The divorce was brutal. She got the house, the cars, the businesses. I kept my dignity, or at least I tried to. What hurt most wasn't losing her. It was the way Daniel looked at me afterward. He blamed me. He believed her success was hers alone, that I had dragged her down, that I was nothing more than dead weight she had finally cut free. Emily never said those words, but I could see in her eyes she knew the truth ran deeper. Still, she stayed quiet, caught between loyalty to her mother and love for her father. For years I lived simply. I had my teaching salary, my small apartment, and occasional phone calls from Emily. But Daniel, he never forgave me. Every time we spoke, it ended in tension. He would talk about his mother's empire, about how he was helping her with the business, about how proud she was of him. And then he'd turn the knife just a little deeper, reminding me I had no place in that world anymore. So when he told me not to come to the will reading, I believed him. I believed I was nothing but a ghost in their story. But Julia had seen me. Even after everything, she had seen me. That night after the will reading, I sat alone in my apartment and stared at the folder. Inside were the details: the house she had left me, the trust, the annual payments. But what mattered most wasn't the money. It was the letter she had written. The lawyer hadn't read it aloud, but he had slipped it into the folder for me. I unfolded it with trembling hands. "Michael," it began. Her handwriting hadn't changed. Still neat, still deliberate, still hers. "I know you probably don't expect this. I know you think I erased you from my life. But the truth is, I never could. You were the foundation of everything I built. Without you, there would have been no first shop, no courage to take the first step, no safety net when I fell. I was too proud to admit it when we were together, and I was too stubborn to tell you afterward. But now, with whatever time I have left in this world gone, I don't want my silence to be my legacy. I want you to know that I saw you, every sacrifice, every late night, every time you swallowed your pride so that I could rise. I saw it all, and though I may not have loved you the way you deserved, I respected you more than I ever said. This is my way of saying thank you. Take the house. Take the trust. Live the rest of your life knowing you were never invisible. You were the reason I became who I was. Always, Julia." Tears blurred my vision, falling onto the paper. I hadn't cried in years, but in that moment, the dam broke. I cried for the years lost, for the love that could never be repaired, for the son who despised me, for the woman I once loved who had finally spoken the truth too late for me to answer. But I also cried for relief, for the strange, bittersweet peace that came with her final words. The next days were difficult. Daniel refused to speak to me. He called me names, accused me of manipulating the situation, claimed the lawyer was lying. He threatened to contest the will, but the lawyer shut that down quickly. Julia's instructions were airtight. Emily, on the other hand, started visiting me more often. She brought food, sat with me, asked questions about the old days. She wanted to know about the sacrifices, the nights I worked extra jobs, the little details of the life she had been too young to remember. I told her everything, and as I did, I could see her piecing together the truth, realizing the story of her parents was more complicated than she'd been led to believe. One evening, Emily said something that struck me deeply. She held my hand and whispered, "Dad, maybe Mom couldn't love you the way you loved her. But maybe she left this for you because, in the end, she wanted you to know you mattered. And maybe that's enough." I realized then that it was enough. More than enough. The money, the house, the recognition, it was all secondary. What truly mattered was that I had been seen, that my sacrifices, my love, my invisible labor had not been erased. Julia's final gift wasn't financial security. It was dignity. And that's what I want you, listening to this story, to take with you. Because maybe you feel invisible right now. Maybe you feel like your sacrifices go unnoticed, like the people you've poured yourself into have forgotten you. But I promise you, someone sees, someone knows, and one day the truth will rise. My story isn't just about an inheritance or the 34 million will. It's about love, sacrifice, pride, and forgiveness. It's about how even broken relationships can leave behind unexpected gifts. And it's about holding on, even when you feel unseen. Because the world always remembers those who loved quietly, who carried the weight without applause. And sometimes, when you least expect it, the recognition comes, not in life but in the legacy you leave behind. So if this story touched you, if it reminded you of the sacrifices you or someone you love have made, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share more stories like this, stories that remind us of the power of love, the weight of sacrifice, and the unexpected turns of life. And remember, no sacrifice is ever truly invisible.